Things I want to call out about that. Available next week, Tuesday, so go, everyone here, get it and play. But there's also the whole free thing. We want to keep, you guys happy and keep the discs in the tray, essentially. And we want to extend out the life of Mass Effect 3 as much as possible. We understand there's great value for both the player and for us for you to do that, so that's our focus. So that's multiplayer for the time being. So single player. Okay. Still. So Thursday we announced the extended cut. Now, to be clear, the extended cut is not a reimagining of the endings or a new ending. But there are a number of things that we made sure that we wanted to do with it. And we're currently building it right now. Our cinematics team, led by Paris Lay, is on it as we speak. The writers, including two of the writers at the end of the table, are heavily involved, and it's coming together. Now, we wanted to clarify a number of things for the players. We wanted to make sure that we actually answered the questions that we're seeing. We're all on Twitter, we're all on the social networks. We may not tweet necessarily or respond or engage in conversation, but we definitely put together the lists. So the community team, with the help of Jessica and Chris, feed us the information that you guys are the questions that you guys have. And so because of that, that's how we're going to take the direction for the extended cut deal. So we want to give some more closure around some of the questions you have, fill some of the unknowns, and in general, we really wanted to give the players a sense of personalization with the ending. So, many people mentioned that some of the choices that were within the game are not necessarily reflected in the ending scenes. We're definitely going to focus on things like that. We want to make sure that when you see the ending of Mass Effect, you now have the information and the context to feel satisfied. And in general, we're really excited to be doing it. So bear with us over the next couple months while we work on it, and it will come out, again, it will come out free. And currently, we're shooting for a generic summer release, but we're going to put the time and the effort into it that it takes. We're not going to rush it, but it's going to be done well. It's more than just a few cinematic scenes. It's more than just a small coat of paint. It is definitely a considerable amount. And so we're happy to be doing it. Woo! And so with that, I believe, Chris, there were some questions related to that?
Yeah, we're going to open it up to questions of everybody here in the room, but we had some come through our social media channels, the BioWare social network, our Twitter and our Facebook feeds. And we know these are pretty popular questions. We know a lot of you probably have the same sort of questions, so we're going to kind of cover some of them right at the start, and then, as we said, we'll open up the room later. Hopefully we'll have provided the answer you're looking for. We'll see where we go. The first, Mike, you already kind of touched on it, is will the new extended cut provide new endings to the Mass Effect franchise?
Yeah, so basically you already talked about that one, like no new endings, but we want to provide closure.
Okay, the next question about that is why was that content not in the game at launch?
The dev team stands by what we released in the core product. We're very proud of it, and thanks. It was important, though, like most things that we do, for us to listen to the community. And a lot of the community feedback obviously didn't come until the game came out. And once we were listening, once we've heard, then we've decided to move on the extended cut. So really, we couldn't have included it in the game because we didn't know there was such a huge demand for it, to be honest with you. So.
How does BioWare feel about the response from the fans?
There's the gun.
That's a loaded gun. Just kidding. You know what? Anytime anyone has constructive criticism, we've always welcomed it, and I'm sure there are always the few in the entire lot that are not as constructive as possible. But we honestly don't let it make us jaded. We still understand that there's a lot of valuable feedback to be provided. You know, even today we were presented with an entire book of valuable feedback. A gorgeous book. And again, I mean, we still welcome it. So yeah, keep it coming. There's nothing stopping you guys. So.
Yeah, I wanted to add a little bit about this. I talk to the dev team a lot as I'm part of the community team reading Bioware Social Network and everything. And whether it's support or whether it's anger, whether it's, you know,
cupcakes,
love or rage, whatever it is, we get it from you fans because you care about the game. For us, really, it would be awesome if, you know, you bought the game and went, wow, that's the best game of all time, and then waited for the next DLC. But we know reality, that's probably not going to happen all the time. But when we get the feedback, like Mike said, the dev team is listening, we're reading forums, we're reading Twitter, we're reading media reviews, we're reading what the fans have to say. It matters to us, and it helps make us make better games in DLC. So we thank you very much for your feedback. The next question has to do with Tally's face. It's kind of a two-part question. One, why did we choose to show Tally's face at all in the game? And then two, why was it
a stock image?
Okay. Well, you know, the first question is quite obvious. A lot of people are basically wondering what Tally's face looked like, and we wanted to do it in a tasteful way that didn't necessarily throw it into the game engine. We thought that a gift from Tally, you know, in the form of a picture is probably the most appropriate way to do it. Yeah, and in terms of what Tally's face looked like and why it looked the way it was, we often use source material, source art for many things within our game. In the case of Tally's face, we wanted something to be photorealistic. We wanted the level of fidelity to be there. We wanted the color to be right. We wanted to essentially make it as close as a picture as possible. And it's not like it's the first picture that we stumbled across. We poured through thousands and thousands of pieces of source art to kind of lock in. Plus there was the artistic vision. And so we were able to essentially combine those two into what you guys saw as Tally's face. We've done it throughout, you know?
If I could jump in for a second.
Sure.
I don't know if she's still here, could all the Samara cosplayers stand up? One, I don't know if the other one is actually staying here. There she is.
There she is in fact.
And if I remember correctly, you are the face model for Samara.
It's a great example of how a real face can make it into mass.
Yeah, so Liara, her face is based on a real face model. Same goes for Commander Shepard, same goes for Miranda, obviously Yvonne Strahovski. And we really felt that Tally deserved that same treatment. We wanted her to be based on a real person because there are people for whom that relationship is as important as the relationship with Liara or Miranda or any of the other love interests.
Yeah!
Patrick wrote down that he's very passionate.
I have a vested interest.
Okay, and kind of one final question. This one keeps popping up. Do we have any comments about the indoctrination theory?
Use it!
Okay, so first of all, the indoctrination theory kind of illustrates, again, how committed the fan base is. Here's the thing. The thing is, we don't want to comment either way on it, and here's why. We don't want to be prescriptive for how people interpret the ending, especially with the extended cut DLC coming out. We don't want to, again, be prescriptive with how people should think things ended. We want the content to speak for itself, and we'll let it do so. So that's all I'm saying.
Well, I want to get some of the rest of the team here involved in the panel as well. Alex. Alex is, as I mentioned, a level designer. He's also kind of a fact checker and information buff. And I know you've got some stats and that sort of thing you wanted to pass out.
Absolutely. So as we were preparing for this panel, I poured over the content from ME1 to ME3, trying to get a feel for how our content has evolved over time, and I hadn't realized how crazy we are. Let me give you a couple of numbers. So let's start with something really concrete. You all know the Normandy, right? I contend that the Normandy is probably the most complicated piece of content ever created. We've had the same designer on it for 3 games, and thank God, because I don't think anybody else could stomach that. Just to give you a couple of numbers to keep things in perspective. So in ME1, there were 136 conversations on the Normandy. Yeah, a substantial amount of content. That bumped up to 172 on ME2. In ME3, there are 300 conversations that occur on the Normandy. And that's 150 of them are ambient conversations that go on, whether you interact with them or not, but 150 of them are full conversations. And some of these are multi-part. So that turns out to hours and hours and hours. I mean, across the entire game, I talked to our localization people, I've got some crazy numbers. I mean, we've got literally 300,000 VO words that were recorded, and that's in 7 languages. So we've got a team of 21 translators who in total translate about 4 million words. I mean, if you just look at single language, we've got the equivalent of about 7.5 novels worth of text in this game. It just dwarfs when you start thinking about these numbers. I mean, as a designer, I get to play with a lot of different assets created by artists, created by animators, and created by writers, obviously. Just in the Normandy, there were about 15,000 nuts and bolts. Like 15,000 pieces that were put together lovingly by hand.
That also need to be tested.
So, again, just to try to see the evolution of Mass 1 to Mass 3, I got a few other interesting numbers. So, the design team, for example, you could expect that, well, if we've been doubling almost every single time, the design team must have, tripled or something. Well, actually, not quite. We started out in Mass 2, we were about 23. I can't actually take credit for that. I wasn't actually there at the time. In ME2, we were 55. ME3, 57. So we basically almost did the double amount of work in the relative amount of time. But there's good reasons for that. Obviously, the difference between Mass 1 and Mass 2 were probably a little more obvious from the user perspective. And the difference between Mass 2 and Mass 3 may be a little more subtle. But from our end, we see it as a lot more content, which is actually great to work with. Again, a couple of extra numbers. Number of plot values, the number of variables that designers play around with has increased insanely. Started off with about 3,500 different plot